Hold on, this one boss is not going to get deleted quickly. This is one of the bosses that's pretty hard to deal with in this game. I say that as all my minions start to auto-delete everybody. Holy crap. How long did that take on that boss? How long was that, Wolfies? I think that boss fight was maybe 20 seconds, 15 seconds at best. This is the Corpse Explosion Bone Spear minion build for Diablo IV, Wolfies. I'm going to go over it really quickly if you want to copy this. So what you're going to want is 1 point into Bone Splinters. Then you put a point into Enhanced Bone Splinters. You put a point into Initiate Bone Splinters. Moving down from here in your core skills, you're going to want 5 points into Bone Spear, 1 point into Bone Spear's Enhanced Bone Spear, 1 point into Supernatural Bone Spear because we're going to abuse Vulnerable with this particular build. Everything else here, you're not necessarily taking except for the passives. So we're going to take 3 points into Unliving Energy so we can increase our maximum essence. Then we want 3 points into Imperfectly Balanced. Your core skills cost 9 more essence, but they deal 15% more increased damage, which is very important for this build. And then from here, this you can choose if you want to use it or not. I like it in particular. I have 3 points into Hewed Flesh. Your damage has up to 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. This is very important because we want to have a way to constantly summon minions, particularly, and also abuse the ring that we have on this particular gear. From here, moving downward, we have our Corpse and Maccabee skills. Here, we're just going to want 1 point into Blood Mist. We're not putting anything into its extras. From here, we're going to want 5 points basically through the use of gear into Corpse Explosion, but realistically what you want is 1 point into Corpse Explosion, 1 point into Enhanced Corpse Explosion, 1 point into Blighted Corpse Explosion. But in your gear, if you can, get Corpse Explosion buffs to like at least 5. I highly recommend it because it helps tremendously with what you're trying to do. From there, we want 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery. That way they have more life and can do more damage because they did buff the minions in Season 3 for the mid-season patch. Then from there, 3 points into Grim Harvest, where it, as you can see here, consuming a corpse generates 6 essence. Then from there, 3 points into Fueled by Death. You deal 9% increased damage for 6 seconds after consuming a corpse. Moving down from here, what we're going to want is in our curse skills, we're not taking any curses, we're just interested in the passives. So we're going to take 3 points into Death's Embrace. Basically, close enemies take 6% more damage from you, and you deal 12% less damage to you. And then from here, we want Skeletal Mage Mastery here. 3 points into this, increase your damage and life of your Skeletal Mages by 60%. Then from here, Death's Approach. 3 points into this, you gain 12% movement speed, which becomes very, very handy because, you know, Necromancers are a little bit slow. And then moving into your Corpse and Maccabee skills here. Again, you want 1 point into Corpse Tendrils. But I have gear that's putting +5 into all gears, so that's why I have +5 here. 1 point into Enhanced Corpse Tendrils. Enemies who are in range of Corpse Tendrils are slowed by 50% before being pulled. And then we want 1 point into Plagued Corpse Tendrils because, again, for this build, we abuse vulnerable damage. So enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils are made vulnerable for 3 seconds. Moving on from here, we want 3 points into Serration. Bone skills have 0.9 increased critical strike, chance for 30 essence you have upon cast. Then from there, Rapid Ossification. Every 100 essence you spend reduces the cooldowns of your bone skills by 1.5 seconds. We want 3 points into Evulsion. Your bone skills deal 15% increased critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. Then from here, you can put 1 point into Compound Fracture. After critically striking 10 times with bone skills, your bone skill deals 5% increased damage for 5 seconds. I don't really feel like 3 points of that is worth it, where you could put into the Earth skills I've shown you so far, Wolfies. Then from there, 1 point is in Bone Spear only because of our gear, but you're not ever going to use that, so don't pay any attention to that. Moving downward into our ultimate skills, I don't take any ultimate attacks because it's just a waste of a skill slot compared to everything else that we could do with this build. So what you want is 3 points into Golem Mastery, increase the damage and life of your golem by 75%. Moving on from here, nothing else you are going to take as you see here, but you will want to then take in the last slot here for your key passive, the Ossified Essence. Bone skills deal 0.5% increased damage for each point of essence you have above 50 upon cast. This is very important for Bone Spear because you can deal a lot of damage. For Paragon, honestly, I'm not going to go over too much because it's going to be different for everybody. But like the one things I would, oh, sorry about that. The one things I would focus on getting in the beginning, obviously in your first Paragon board, I would probably put here either exploit or vulnerable wherever you can. Then for your second board, what I would personally do is get the board where you get the very important key passive. I'm going to show you here in a second. Be patient with me. So you want Cult Leader so you can increase the damage of the minions. Everything else here you can kind of go back to and play around depending if you really feel like you need Infused Warrior, which I'm going to go back and do that personally. And if you really need Puppeteer as well, like you can mess around with that. But again, you just play with what you want. Here for the second one, what I'm particularly care for is Bone Graft for where I am currently, because it just increases our bone skills. Play around with what you're going to be focusing. If you're going to go more bone, spend more time with the bone passives here. If you're going to go more minion, spend more time with the minion, and then add each board according to what you're going to do, particularly with the build. Now, as for the gear, what would I recommend? Obviously, you want Deathless Visage, because Bone Spear leaves behind echoes as it travels that explode, dealing 629 damage. Could be even higher in damage depending where you are in Diablo 4. Increased by 5% for every 30% your critical strike damage bonus. Then from there, what I would recommend is just get on your tunic this particular aspect that says every 8 seconds your skeletal mages can cast a blizzard that deals 886 cold damage and continuously chills enemies for 8% for 6 seconds. This is kind of important because you can freeze enemies in. Here, honestly, I wouldn't go with willpower, go with better stats where you can get like increased not very physical damage, but anything that can buff your health overall, make you a little bit more tanky in the armor, anything that can power up bone skills in particular, or plus stats to your skill tree. Here in the gloves, what I would recommend is get anything with very high critical stats. If you could get vulnerable on the gloves, definitely do that as well. Plus 13 all stats, because it makes it a little bit easier for me to kind of do what you saw me do here against that particular dungeon boss. Maximum number of skeletal mages increased by 2%. That's or by 2, excuse me. That's going to be the aspect that we're going to use here. For the pants, again, what I'm going to use is an aspect that says you and your minions gain 20% increased damage reduction, just so that they're a little bit more tanky against the bosses. Here on the pants, anything that buffs intelligence, anything that buffs all stats, anything that can increase your healing overall, that would be kind of helpful. You have to play around with the rules because, you know, it's an endless grind fest in Diablo 4. For the legs, again, here I wanted to focus on intelligence and my dodge chance, and anything that can power bone skills here you preferably want. Unfortunately, I got Bone Spirit here. Attacks reduced by evades cooldown by 0.8 seconds is pretty useful. For really, it's more about the aspects with these particular things, and then you just play around with the stats and swap out continuously so you get best in slot. Here I have the aspect that says your maximum number of skeletal warriors is increased by 2. So on the boots I have those skeletal warriors, on the gloves I have the skeletal mages. That gives me 2 extra minions, so I can kind of abuse that. For the ring, which really is what makes this build, Ring of the Sacrilegious Soul. Basically, as you can see here, you automatically activate the following equipped skills on corpses around you. So Ray Skeleton every 1.8 seconds, Corpse Explosion every 1.8 seconds, Corpse Tendrils every 14 seconds for the Necromancer only. This ring is very, very situational. Hopefully you'll get it. I got an okay roll. I would have preferred to see it with vulnerable damage and critical strike, but it gave me +2 to all corpse skills, which kind of busts me up a bit and also increases our maximum essence, and the lucky hit chance is okay to have. Moving forward with the necklace here, basically I wanted the aspect that says gain 26% increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast a Corpse Tendril. You deal 51% bonus critical strike damage to your enemies, damage by Corpse Tendril. Again, we're abusing critical strike damage, vulnerable damage, as well as just Bone Spear with this build, so it does quite a lot thanks to the ring and everything. Moving down to the last slot, I have here Circle of Inner Calm. Basically, it says deal 5% increased damage for each second you stand still, up to 40%. This could be anything you want. I have found it particularly useful because since I'm standing still quite a bit with Bone Spear, especially against bosses, it gives me an increased amount of damage, and then when you factor that in conjunction with the Deathless Visage, in conjunction with the glove roll that I have, as well as some of the air rolls, as well as the weapon roll here, which we'll talk about last, it does a lot of damage. For the weapon, I want basically the aspect that says Bone Spear's primary attack makes its enemies hit beyond the first vulnerable for 3 seconds. bone shards from Bone Spear deal 60% bonus damage to vulnerable enemies and pierce them. So again, when you factor this in with the Deathless Visage, you factor in the ring, and then you factor in Circle of Intercom, you're dealing an incredibly significant amount of damage that you can basically delete bosses, as you saw me do just there. And that's basically all there is to the Necromancer Bone Spear Corpse Explosion build, the way that I particularly play it. Obviously, as you get to World Tier 4, what you're going to want to do is upgrade these to their highest ancestral versions. You can also use a glove that I haven't gotten yet, as well as a boot that I haven't gotten yet, to kind of experiment with that. But really, for this build, if you just use this stuff, you're gonna do pretty fine. You're probably gonna course your way all the way probably till very high, like World Tier 4 stuff. Probably like Uber Lilith is probably where you're gonna see the skill cap, and then maybe you'll respec out to something else like the Sever build, which I particularly didn't want to play that. I wanted to find something to play that's very similar to Masquerade of the Burning Carnival, very similar to what it is in Diablo 3. But that is the build, Wolfies, for those of you who are interested as to what I was rocking for Season 3 of Diablo 4.